And what you end up with is this perfect storm of all of these people who have been able to start a business, essentially walking to the edge of the Grand Canyon and then just shouting, buy my stuff into the abyss, rather than thinking about their marketing and messaging from a very sophisticated sort of way.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know that I'm known as the speech coach for executives? That's because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And we do that through one-on-one coaching or group training for the team. When you listen to this podcast, you will hear advice and insights from communication experts from around the world. My guest today is Robin Waite. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Robin. 1, he has surfed 12-foot waves in Morocco. Whoa, those are big waves. 2, he's downhill on his bicycle at 52.5 miles per hour over a 2-kilometer descent. Now, that is incredibly fast on a bicycle. It sounds like you do things that just scare the hell out of you. And 3, he has a Guinness World Record for taking part in the largest speed networking event at the time. Robin Waite, welcome to Your Intended Message.
Thank you, George. It's a real pleasure to join you on the podcast today.
Delighted to be talking with you. And I think 2 other pieces of information for guests it would be helpful to know. 1, you are founder of Fearless Business. And 2, you're author of the book. And Robin, let's start with the book. Take your shot, what that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started coaching in 2016 after selling my agency, and I used to run a marketing agency. So I informally started mentoring other agency owners because they got interested in how I managed to sort of build and sell an agency. And as part of that journey, I put on a webinar. And this guy showed up to the webinar. Well, there was about 80 people on it, but this guy called me about 5 minutes after the end of it, a guy called Russ, very excitable, praising, like he said, it was one of the best webinars he'd ever been on, and he wanted to work with me. And how do we get started? And I said, oh, great. Well, tell me about your agency. And he said, oh, agency? No, I'm a golf professional. I was like, oh, right. Okay. How did you end up on this webinar then? And he said, oh, well, a good friend of mine recommended it. But, and anyway, so Russ, the golf pro, ended up becoming my first official coaching client after I'd certified. And we did amazing stuff, which, I started telling the story about Russ and his journey through us coaching together at various events, which I spoke at. And the amount of people who said, you should probably put that into a book, Robin, because it's a great story and it's a great how you articulate, the process that you took Russ through, in sort of 5 simple steps. They said that would make a wonderful story. So that's kind of, I won't give too many spoiler alerts away, obviously, because there is a gift for people who are listening in as well, or if they happen to read it. But yeah, it's that short story, a journey between Russ and his business coach, and then the amazing work which they do together.
Now, Robin, one of the messages that you send that I find intriguing is that it's not necessarily about getting lots and lots of customers. What's a better approach?
Well, we live in this sort of day and age now. I mean, you have to bear in mind, I think you've been in business for a while. I've been in business for 20 plus years now, and the landscape marketing wise has changed dramatically. So as you know, marketing is all about how we communicate with one another about, around our offer and our brand and our messaging and all sorts of things like that. And 20 years ago, when I first registered my first business, I think there was, these are statistics in the UK, and they're broadly sort of similar globally as well within different countries. But in the UK, there was just under 500,000 registered small businesses. Today, though, there's nearly 6 million. So there's 12 times the number of businesses registered. And that statistic is reflected in various different countries globally. So first of all, in your own geographic area, there's 12 times the number of people competing for the same work that in the industry, whichever industry it is that you work in. The second thing which has happened over that time is the advent of fast internet. So what's happened is we've also now got this global marketplace because it's really quick and easy to start a business, register it, get online, and then start promoting it through websites and various other things like that. And so we haven't now just got more competition locally. We've also got this global marketplace that we're working within. Then you add into the mix in the 2010s, social media. So all of the various different platforms, which really sort of started to grow and escalate around about 2013, 2014. And what you end up with is this perfect storm of all of these people who have been able to start a business, essentially walking to the edge of the Grand Canyon and then just shouting, buy my stuff into the abyss, rather than thinking about their marketing and messaging from a very sophisticated sort of way. And I see a lot of business owners who ultimately end up burning out because they spend 90% of their time trying to market their products and services. And instead of spending the time getting the structure of their business right and building a business that's based on sustainability and profitability. So in my view, and we've got these three ways that we can grow a business. The first one is we do more marketing, i.e. we get more clients, but we sell it at the same price. The second way is the accountant's favorite, which is to, slash our cost base so we eke out more net profit. But in my view, it's very short-term thinking. Great if you create loads of profit and you're able to reinvest that into growth. But what I've discovered is the fastest way to grow a business is actually through raising your prices. And of course, when you raise your prices, obviously I don't recommend just doubling or tripling your price without stacking any extra value into whatever your offer is. But what happens is when you do, let's say, double or triple your price, well, you can actually have far fewer clients within that. So if you've got, the ideal business in my view is one where you've got double the income with half the clients. And if you've got half the clients, you can do half the sales calls and half the marketing, which takes half the effort. And you can actually then focus on delivering remarkable value to the clients which you do get in. And there's this really virtuous sort of cycle which happens when you do that, because when you put more time and effort into the clients you've got, what tends to happen is they get better results and outcomes. And from those results and outcomes which they get, they want to stick around for longer. Therefore, they spend more money. So there's more money to be made on the back end. And of course, they also tell all of their friends about you as well. So it means that there's even less marketing to do because you're getting more high quality referrals from, your existing client base.
And what you say, Robin, makes perfect sense. And yet so few people do it. Why do you think that is?
It's the typical sort of fears around, and hence the reason why I branded the business Fearless Business is because fear of rejection. Most people assume that when they put their prices up, that all of their existing clients will run for the hills and any new prospects will go to their cheaper competitors. And I've gone and got as much data as I possibly can do about this. So in 9 years now that I've been coaching, I've worked with hundreds, well, possibly if not thousands of business owners. And it's very rare that you put your prices up and you don't end up less profitable. I think out of 750 businesses I've had through my program explicitly, we've only ever had 3 where raising prices has been problematic and they've ended up having to, well, typically what happens at that point, you have to restructure your offer so that it delivers a different kind of value to a potentially a different type of audience. So even then it was reparable. You could, once we put the prices up, change the audience, we were then able to get them into a place of profitability. But yeah, most people are just afraid. And it's quite interesting whenever they say to me, oh, I think all of my clients are going to disappear when I put my price up. I'm like, well, what evidence do you have for that? And they're like, I don't have any evidence. Because they haven't done it before because they've been too afraid. So, and again, I'm not, there are some businesses where you can sort of double, triple, quadruple your prices because these business owners have so vastly undersold themselves before that there's a massive gap in, what they can create for themselves. Most of the time though, we sort of go up in increments. So as somebody's confidence grows, let's say you're selling $1,000 product today. We're Robin and George agree that it's too cheap. So we're going to put our prices up and then we will gradually increment the numbers to a point where it's like just outside their comfort zone. So they might get to say $1,500 and you're like, great. Now what we want you to do is go and speak to 10 prospective clients and you're going to pitch all 10 of those a $1,500 offer. And near as damn it, I can guarantee that most people will convert something out of those 10 people. And the typical conversion rate is about 1 in 5 to 1 in 3. So you're talking like 2, 3 or 4 people out of the 10 will buy that new offer at the new price. And from there, then that person's like, oh, I'm a bit more confident now. So the fear is starting to ebb away. The fear is ever so slightly less than what it was before. And so they start to, at that point, you've learned everything you need to know about raising your prices. And so quite often I get messages from people like, oh, hey, Rob, you'll never guess what? I pitched the 10 people at 1,500 and 3 said yes. So I've already put my prices up to 1,800. So they've learned how to then go about, articulating their value better, mostly through sales conversations and practicing because it's one of those things. I don't think many people realize this. They think that they have to have the same conversation when they raise their prices as they did previously. But if your offer is bigger and better and, creates a more remarkable outcome for your clients and the prices are higher, well, invariably that conversation does need to be different. Handled in a very different way, because it might be then that you are competing against somebody who is cheaper than you, or maybe the person who's investing in it is slightly more constrained around their budget, but they can see the value in it. So you just have to learn how to articulate your value around that offer.
And so what I'm hearing is that when and if we consider raising our fees, our prices, we need to get used to accept the idea that we are simply sending the message that our value is worth more and that we are not going to be the low bidder.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Most people, when you ask them to almost justify their prices, what they tend to go down the route of is explaining what it is that they do. Right. So a humble web designer might say, oh, well, we build the best HTML standards compliant websites that are going to get found in Google and now talk to AI. So your site will get found in ChatGPT and all of that. So they'll talk about all the features of it, in the shopping cart and the blog and the things they're going to add onto it. But realistically, that's not what the client is really that interested in. It's a bit like, for somebody going into a mechanics and or a car dealership and they're about to be sold a car. It's like, do you want to learn about the 3-inch stainless steel exhaust and the carburetor that's plugged into it and the 2,500cc engine, the whatever? You're like, no, I just want to see how I feel when I get into the car and press the accelerator, right? And does it have enough space for my family? Are they going to have fun in this car when we go on journeys together? So we want to get out of feature selling and we want to shift more towards selling results and outcomes. So for the web designer, for example, that would be, we're going to generate 15 to 20 qualified leads for your business each and every month. And hopefully then if they're a savvy business owner, they'll be able to figure out for themselves what those 15 to 20 leads are worth. And I do always say to people as well, when you raise your prices, what you've got to become a master of is helping the client to figure out what the ROI, the return on investment, is going to be when they buy your product or service. It's not what you do, it's the result of what you do. And so there's some really simple calculations which you can do in order to help people sort of figure that out. So even just understanding the basics, business basics, sort of finances of revenue, cost of sales and gross profit, overheads, and then, net profit at the end of it. If you've got somebody, let's say the web designer is selling a website to a coach, for example. Well, if that coach charges $5,000 and the web designer can get them 15 leads a month and they have a 1 in 5 conversion rate, well, that's 3 clients, i.e. it's $15,000 income each month from that website, which they've built. And I do genuinely believe that every business owner needs to figure out how to communicate that return on investment to their clients, or at least help them figure it out. There are some more intangible businesses where this is slightly harder. So there's a slight caveat here. So for example, a life coach who is helping people with confidence. It's like, well, how do you figure out an ROI on confidence, right? So there's a couple of things depending on their niche. It could be that maybe they're like a career coach. So the ROI could be, well, either getting that person a new job with a pay increase or getting a promotion at work up to managerial or directorship. And they get a high salary. It's just, that's one way of measuring the ROI. The ROI could also be in terms of their enjoyment of it. So, they might be enjoying their current role. They're like a 2 out of 10. It's awful. They have that Sunday night dread and they just want a job where they just really enjoy it and the money's not quite so important. So we'll work together for 90 days. And then at the end of it, hopefully you'll have a career or a job which you love. You'll be an 8, a 9, or even a 10 out of 10. So you can still help people to figure out what that ROI is going to be. It's just that it might not be intangible, it might be intangible and you might not be able to directly correlate it to pounds. And the other way of measuring ROI is time. So there could be services which people provide, which is, going to save somebody more time. So a VA working for the director of a company, for example, if he's spending 20 hours a week in the business, out in the warehouse, helping to run the show, and then that VA can come in and take some of that, offload some of that work off that person, organizational work, and save them 15 hours a week. Well, how much would that 15 hours a week be worth then to the business overall? What could the director of that company do with that time, for example? So there are ways and means. The hardest one though is around sort of the medical profession. So if you deal with sort of mind, body, and spirit, again, it's actually unethical to kind of promise an outcome or result. So, and I'm very, very against sort of, therapists giving money back guarantees based on results. However, there is also this thing called a perceived value guarantee. So again, it's like, if we get to the end of our work together and you genuinely feel like you haven't received value for money, let's have a discussion about it, because I want to make sure that you're happy at the end of this arrangement. But again, it's all based on those outcomes and results.
Robin, when there are potential results, identifiable results, should we identify those results in our initial message to our prospects? Should we say, if you're looking for this, I can help, or if these are results that you're after, that's what I do? Is that a message we should send?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a really great exercise, really simple exercise, actually, which you can do to help figure that out as well. So I call it the 99 problems exercise. So you open up a Google Doc with a bullet list and you write down 99 problems, pain points, and challenges that your clients experience. It's a really hard exercise. So I'll lay down the gauntlet. The fastest I've ever been able to get to 99 is 34 minutes. Most people will get to about 20, 30, 40 problems, and then they'll be scratching ahead because you've got to dig really deep to figure out the 99 biggest problems. And what that does is it then helps you to be able to communicate that in things like your marketing. If you do any, so I also recommend things called like an indoctrination sequence. So just a short series of videos or posts or pieces of content that, again, allude to those problem, pain points, and challenges that your client commonly experiences, and then starts to sort of help them to figure out and see, how big a pain point it is, how long they can tolerate that pain point for, and what the world would look like if that pain was taken away within the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So the idea is you want to empower your clients to be able to, or prospects to be able to, understand these pain points on a far deeper level. So it comes from, I learned this actually, there's a fantastic book, it's called Breakthrough Advertising, which was written, I think, in 1967 or something like that. So by an amazing copywriter called Eugene Schwartz. So 1967, obviously it predates, internet marketing, digital marketing, which I think is like clouded a lot of people's kind of, knowledge and understanding of like what marketing and advertising really is. But in this book, Gene Schwartz talks about the 5 stages of market sophistication. And the first 2 are so the first one is, how problem aware is our audience? And if they're not problem aware, if they're problem unaware, they're going to be very hard to sell to, because you've got to go through this whole educational indoctrination sequence to help them understand their problems, highlight them, and then realize that they actually need to do something about it. So that leads on to stage 2, which is now where they are problem aware. So they know that they're overweight, not making enough money in their business, whatever the problem, pain point, challenge is. And they know that now they want to fix that. So they're then looking for a solution. So at stage 2, they're problem aware, but solution unaware. Then we shift into stage 3, which is where we start to become solution aware. So if we were to stay with the weight loss thing, 'cause it's just easy as a concept for most people. You can fix it with pills. You can have a fat loss injection. You can go on diets. You can go on an exercise regime. So there's lots of different solutions that you can start to identify. And then we go into that sort of matchmaking mindset where we're trying to figure out which one of those solutions works best for me. Well, I don't like the idea of pills or injections, but I can see myself eating more healthily and maybe getting 10,000 steps in. So I'll try and find, but I'm not very good at holding myself to account. So I need a coach who maybe can help me do those things. So that's when we then shift into stage 4, which is what we call brand awareness. And this isn't just a specific brand. This might be where they've narrowed it down to 3 or 4 service providers, which could be a good fit because they fit those criteria that we mentioned earlier on. And then gradually they then hone in on that one person, that one solution or brand, where they then have the buying conversation. So this is the point where we're aware of the problems. We now know what the solution is. We figured out that whoever it is the best solution for us. And now we're going to start asking about what that solution is, how it works, and what the price is. So that's stage 5, where we sort of get into product and price awareness. And what happens is, I think in 2025, that book was written, 60 odd years ago. What's happening kind of these days is everybody's like, we've all got mortgages to pay and food to put on our table and things like that. But too many business owners are just like rushing the sale. They're desperate to make sales because they need the money. And so they're making it all about them. But if you noticed, each of those stages of the 5 stages of market sophistication is all about the prospect. It's all about the client and understanding their needs. And I think this is where a lot of business owners get their communication wrong these days. Because like I said, way back at the start, when you got all these people shouting into the abyss, well, that's social media. You only have to go onto Facebook or LinkedIn and see on your feed, pretty much every other post is like, look at me, look how amazing I am, buy my offer, buy my solution. Very little of it is actually about the client and the prospect and what pain points and challenges they're experiencing, and then with a tiny line at the bottom of it, well, actually, I can help you with that. Just reach out,
I'm intrigued by the list of 99 problems or pain points. Is that simply an exercise for that we should go through? Because I can't see trying to send 99 messages out to the market. Do we shorten that to the top 5 or top 3 or?
Yeah, you've got it. Yeah. So you want to, once you've kind of identified the 99, because that just gives you a whole ream of content to actually start to think about writing about. And it shows a depth of understanding of your client. But yeah, ideally you want to, and generally speaking, they will follow sort of roughly 5, 6, 7 themes, depending on the nature of your business. But there will be sort of 2 or 3 that pretty much every one of your prospects experiences, through working with you. So me, for example, I used to think that my problem was around goal setting, accountability, the usual sort of coachy things. But the conversations I kept having were, well, you're not profitable because you're not charging enough. And actually you're selling time for money rather than selling a packaged up service. So, and then when we fixed that bit, you're really struggling with sales. So I noticed these common patterns that were happening with every single coaching session I was giving. I was having the same conversation over and over. So again, the writing the list, you can narrow them down to what you think is kind of you can use ChatGPT or Claude to write, help you with the 99 problems as well. That's okay too, provided you obviously, interpret it and make sure it's a legit list. That's okay. But yeah, narrow it down to like 2 or 3 main problems that most of your clients experience. That's then what you want to put into your content in order to then start to be able to connect with your prospects. And that's what it's all about. So imagine if you're, a marketeer who works for accountants, and you walk into a networking meeting, there's 100 people in the room. You can say, I help accountants to generate more leads because they don't have enough time, especially at January here in the UK when everybody's busy doing their, final tax returns for January the 31st. We help you have a holiday in January. Right. Mm. So again, like being able to take the problems and pain points that most accountants experience, being busy and tired at the end, through January and having like to work all hours to get all of these returns over the line, but also finding the right sorts of clients that are going to work to the accountant's, way of working as opposed to their own agenda. And straight away you'll see all of the accountants in the room sheepishly sort of putting their hands up saying, and there might be 5 or 6 of them in the room, but that's what we want is to be able to communicate the collective desire effectively of our target audience when you're in a room full of people. That room's slightly different in the online sphere because everybody is there. But being able to effectively communicate in the online space, again, you might have to poke the bear a little bit more. And there's this, as well as the collective desire, there's also this notion of the common enemy. So it helps if there's a common enemy that you can draw upon, which could be, I don't know, the first thing which comes to mind, there's this guy called Russell Brunson who sells ClickFunnels, right? So we're talking like ads and funnels. Well, most accountants are they don't think that works because, for example, most of their relationships have been based on face-to-face networking. And now all of a sudden, if the marketeer is all of these marketeers are forcing Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels down their throat, you kind of want to have Russell Brunson as a common enemy, when you're speaking to accountants. It's not the most well-formed sort of idea, but you get the picture of kind of where I'm going with that.
Mm. And yes, I understand the concept of identifying a common enemy, because when you can show me that you know who my common enemy is, right away, I trust you more. So you've demonstrated that you understand me and my pain, my enemy. Mm. Now, I'm curious, how critical is it that when we're delivering this message about dealing with pain, problems, and value, that we trigger an emotional response?
Imperative. I'd say it's 100%. You have to do it. I mean, so let's look at it very black and white. So the goal of marketing is ultimately to move somebody through, hopefully into a sales conversation. And if it's a best fit, we want to convert them. And as you know, like you think back to pretty much every time when you've bought something of any substance or significance, maybe a watch to celebrate an occasion or a car which you've bought or just anything which is, moderately expensive or a coaching program, it doesn't matter what it is. Your heart will be pounding a little bit. You'll have sweaty palms. You'll have that bit of anxiety around, is this the right decision or not? Is this a sound investment or not? So that's triggering all of those emotions. And one of the things to remember, so a lot of the times where people kind of get this wrong in sales especially is that they, when you get asked that question of how much, you see a lot of people inexperienced sales, they kind of recoil like Gollum with their ring and they're like, it's like $5,000. Right? They don't want to say it, right? So, but think about it from the buyer's perspective. If the buyer is having this very visceral, like emotional experience, and their palms are sweaty and heart's going, and they're like, am I making the right decision or not? But actually, they've saved up their hard-earned money for whatever this thing is which they're about to purchase, and when they say yes, they're excited about it. Do you remember, George, those things you bought? You get excited, don't you? I remember I finished renovating my first house, and my wife said you should buy something to celebrate it. So I bought not a Rolex, that's not my jam, but there was a Tag Heuer watch, which I'd loved. It was the Formula One. And it's one of those things, I've just been looking at it for probably a couple of years, really liked it. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and buy it. I just remember when I finally had that conversation with the person in the shop, and we made the deal. I was so excited and I put it on my wrist and I'm so proud as well, because that signified, I've still got it, signified 4 years of hard graft on the house, So we got the customer who was like so excited, like really like pumped to spend their money with you. And especially thinking about like service providers, because as a service provider, you're about to sort of change their life effectively. So why as a seller, do we not lean into that energy and reflect it? Celebrate with the customer when they're, parting with their hard-earned money, knowing that you're going to be changing their life for the better, hopefully in some way, shape or form. So like emotion is a massive part of it. And people just need to like buy, if you're there, like shrinking like Gollum with his ring, you're making it all about you. You're forgetting about the customer. The customer is the most important person and that they're just over there. Like celebrate with them, be a part of their journey and their excitement.
How can we answer the how much question in a more positive way?
Confidently, I think, is the short one. And also without feeling like you have to justify it. I think a lot of people, if they have an expensive product that they don't genuinely believe in necessarily, they'll say, oh, it's X amount. And these are the reasons you should buy it. And then they start listing off all of the different, reasons, right? But actually what I've discovered is that you can talk yourself out of sales through over talking, over justifying, because all of a sudden they don't realize it's happening, but it triggers those synapses of like, why is this person like not very confident about this? Why are they trying to sell it to me? Why are they pushing it on me? So the simplest way is if, as an example, if you said, well, Robin, how much does it cost to work together? Right. I would probably say something very simple along the lines of, well, George, that's a great question. If you were to invest in Fearless Business, it would be just 5K.
And I noticed at least two techniques there that you used. One is that you just said 5K as opposed to $5,000, 5,000 pounds. So it sounds, and then you shut up after you said that, and you shut up, which now means that I have time to process it. And I look at you and I see there's nothing more coming from you. So I'm guessing, oh, okay, that's must be the final answer. That's the price.
Yep, that's it. And I sometimes I find it hard to shut up, George. I have to practice very hard at that. My speaker coach called me the Gatling gun when I was working with him, because I get a bit excitable and then I just can't do it. So sales, I've had to especially, and coaching as well is you have to learn to be quiet and intentionally listen very hard to somebody in order to pick up all of the sort of various cues. But yeah, the just 5K. So there was a third thing which happened there as well. So I don't know if you noticed it, but the tonality and pacing. If you notice the inflection downwards when I said just 5K, do you see? So again, it changes the energy. That's a very clear sign that, right, it's now your turn to speak, George. You take your time. I've got as long as you need. And then you'll come up with whatever that thing is that's front and center of your mind, that question you've got, that concern or that anxiety or worry. You'll raise it. You might turn around and go, gosh, that's cheap. And I've had that before in the past, where I've sold a service. Oh my God, that's cheap. Yep, let's do it. And you have that very positive, immediate response. There could be some really random things which pop up. It could be, great, thanks so much for that. And then they cut the call short, or thanks so much for that. Actually, I need to go and run it by my husband or my wife or our co-directors in the company. And so then you start to understand what other things aside from price are they considering when they're making their decision? So yeah, it's really important to kind of, let that sort of flow into this is what it is.
Robin, you have a special offer for listeners. Let's tell them what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got some signed copies, physical signed copies of the book just for your listeners, George. So if they want to get hold of a copy of that, head on over to fearless.biz/TYS for Take Your Shot. There is an option for postage on there if you want to. It's not, you don't have to pay for postage if you don't want to. It's completely optional. It just helps obviously with the cost for postage. But I literally ship them anywhere in the world. I think I've sent them to South Africa and to Brazil and to Mongolia and Australia, New Zealand, Canada, everywhere, all around the world. But that's available for all your listeners as well.
And you can find that link in the description below. And yes, I ordered the book, and it's an easy read. It's a practical read, and worth reading and highlighting as you go through that. Great tips there. Robin, as we prepare to wrap up, you're sitting down with a service provider, a business service provider, and you're having a discussion about raising their fees, their prices. And you might have already said this already. If you could have 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice for them, what would it be?
So the first piece of advice I would have is to ask yourself, do you actually believe what you're thinking? Right? Because again, a lot of business owners, so we try and solve the pricing conundrum intellectually, but actually oftentimes our heart is telling us something else. And we get that sinking feeling if we give a price to somebody and it's too low. So be honest with yourself in here as to whether you feel you're being too cheap or not. The second thing is as well, pricing has bandwidth. A lot of people associate pricing with being very binary. So it's too cheap or too expensive. I'm in or out. It's a yes or a no. But actually, pricing is very fluid. So you could have you could be selling your product today for $1,000, but there could be somebody out there selling something similar for $20,000. So we've actually got a bandwidth here of 19,000 numbers that sit between 1,000 and 20,000, and we've got to figure out where your business, economically needs to stack up on what price you've got to serve, but also in here in your heart, do you really genuinely believe that, you're selling it for the right price? And is it too cheap? Quite often when we go through a process of kind of figuring out what that price point is, most people's heart price is 3 times the price of what they figure out intellectually. Okay. And so this leads on to the third sort of, piece of advice. If you were to say start at $1,000, just gradually increment that number in your mind until it gets uncomfortable. And you get a choice then. So let's say you go like $1,200 or $1,500, $1,800, you get to $2,500 and then you're like, you get that, knee jerk sort of gut reaction, right? We now know that we've got to present that offer either just below 2,500 or just above it, or around, is it just inside your comfort zone or just outside it? I prefer, being a fearless business coach, to get people to play just outside it, because that stretch, is what creates that learning experience. However, I'd say probably about a quarter of the people tend to sort of retreat back into just inside their comfort zone, which is fine. If you need that comfort blanket to enable you to be able to sell, that's absolutely fine as well. But the key thing is that we've raised the price. And then once you get out there, and I've found that when people they don't even have to sell anything, just hearing themselves pitch it and communicate that offer at the higher price point, that often just reinforces the fact they go, oh yeah, actually, I am worth that much. It just builds that confidence. And then next thing you know, they go and sell their project or course or coaching or whatever, whatever product or service it is which they're selling.
Valuable advice. My guest today is Robin Waite, reminding you to sell outcomes and results. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.